I was just watching Contra Wagner's of John Searle that he uploaded, and John Searle always kind of interested me. I was interested in him a lot more when I first started going to the university and taking philosophy courses, because unlike a lot of other more materialistic philosophers of consciousness, he said that we need to acknowledge consciousness on its own terms from a first-person perspective, and although it may be caused by brain processes and neural patterns, knowing the neural patterns is not enough to know consciousness. There's something that it's like to be somebody, and that something that it's like, that intentionality, needs to be described just as much as the neural patterns need to be described. But while he'll go that far to say that consciousness is a legitimate area of research, he won't go so far as to acknowledge that consciousness is actively involved in generating what we think a world even is, what we think the material, physical, empirical world that science experiments on is. We still have a meta-concept for that metaphysical idea, which structures everything that we do. It's the paradigm through which we view the world. That's what consciousness constructs for us. So consciousness, not only does it play a causal role, it plays a constructive role. It creates the things that can be affected. And all this talk of the development of consciousness is to point out that consciousness changes what we think the physical world is. And the mental rational structure of consciousness sees and experiences time and space as though there were this objective external world and this internal subjective experiencer of the world, and that they were separate, and that the interior experiencer was completely uniform and homogeneous, and every person had an equally developed sense of the objective world. They just had to, hear it from the experts, be taught by the scientists what the truth was, and they would hear it and understand, and that would be it, because there's this transcendental ego that everybody's got, and it's identical. So we hope. I mean, that's the theory, at least, because obviously they're criminals, they're crazy people, which is why I think schizophrenia is impossible for the science of psychiatry to really get a handle on. I mean, they don't know what it is. They just do studies and, based on statistical analysis, figure out which drugs seem to make the people calm down the best. But beyond that, they don't have a theory of schizophrenia. They have a behavioral application to the supposed cure of it. And then you get into, well, how do they define normalcy? What's the cure? So there's all kinds of problems with that, because our consciousness structure, the mental rational structure, the thing that the majority of people are in right now, it cannot acknowledge consciousness as constitutive of a world, as something that creates what is perceived, as much as what is perceived creates the consciousness. Consciousness creates what is perceived. And I found this video of Alan Wallace, who's another researcher of consciousness, having a debate with John Searle, and I haven't even watched all of it yet. But Wallace's point is that science moves through paradigm shifts, and that we need a paradigm shift in the mind sciences before we can hope to study consciousness. The physical sciences have had many paradigm shifts. The Copernican revolution was probably the first, or at least the most well-known. I mean, all of a sudden, Galileo starts making observations with a telescope of the features of the solar system, and all of a sudden empiricism proves, through the use of the technology of the telescope, the technique of intricately observing the empirical world allows us to prove that we're not the center of the universe, and that the planets aren't these perfect celestial spheres, as Aristotle supposed, but are actually very irregular cratered surfaces. And Galileo saw the phases of Venus and the moons of Jupiter, and there shouldn't be moons in the medieval heavens. That just wasn't a feature that was allowed by orthodoxy at that time. But the paradigm had to shift. Our view of the physical world changed. And Einstein and Newton before Einstein, both of them completely shifted the paradigm in the physical sciences as well. Quantum physics is shifting it as well, and we haven't really moved into a new paradigm yet, because what quantum physics is forcing us to call into question is the mind. But the life sciences had their paradigm shift with Darwin. All of a sudden, we realized that there's no designer. The designer is built into the machine itself. And that completely changed our picture of what life was. But through all these scientific revolutions, we haven't yet had the revolution in the mind sciences, because we haven't yet taken the idea of the development of someone's conscious awareness seriously as something important to be paid attention to. Because it requires a lot of work. I mean, you have to be a logical person who knows how to think clearly before you can be an integral person who can not only think clearly, but they can emote clearly, they can feel clearly, and intuit clearly. Before you can do all those things clearly, you're not aware of origin. You're not aware of the fact that time is ever present.